You know your shortcomings.
I gotta own it. Yeah, it's very important. So, like knowing when things go live because you've got peripheral vision. Like, come on. This shit's like a spider sense these days. Welcome to the Dresden Files
podcast.
Stole Ben's line.
No, you did. Oh my goodness. Welcome to the Dresden Files podcast, the only Dresden Files podcast, sponsored by the Broken Jars Network. Episode something. And we've got lots of news today.
106, according to Trello.
There we go.
And we are going to be talking about Warcry today, I believe. But we got tons of news about goodies and things and virtual things.
Thank you, Priscilla, for dropping the news the day before we recorded instead of 2 days after.
Yay! Now we're
I don't care if it was the publisher's decision. I'm thanking Priscilla.
For a different reason.
Much consideration, such niceness.
So much wow. Yeah. So
well, going back a couple of days was the Badali jewelry.
Yeah, there's a really cool looking new pentacle it's Molly's Winter Lady pentacle. There's a really cool looking blue fire opal in it. They got so limited run. They had an issue with the Demon Reach pentacle that they were working on, so they made this instead. They're all real cool looking though. And if you order anything from Badali, I think you get some Dresden coloring sheets for a while, because why not? It's fun. There was a virtual convention yesterday.
Around 5 or 7.
Okay. And that might have some interesting fun things. Also, we got the Battleground cover yesterday.
Allegedly.
Oh, you doubt the cover?
Yes, I doubt everything.
Of the many things he doubts the entire drop. So
it has
we got the cover.
It's gotta be real.
Got the cover of Battleground where Harry is holding a spear, and it's not Odin's spear.
Prove it.
Put it out of your head.
Right.
He got a spearhead in the last book. He's obviously going full Crusader mode.
Nicodemus must be shitting his pants.
Well, if Nicodemus is smart, he's not in town when the Titan's running around.
Yeah. And the other good thing is we're starting to see how he's using some of those weapons that he got out of the armory, right? So if that is what's going on, I have to imagine, since we don't see the shroud, that he's using his magic underpants. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So he's gonna get multiple wives too.
What?
Yeah, that's exactly
magic underpants. Mormons, come on.
More women in his life.
Oh
geez.
my!
I had taken it that far, but I had not taken it to You're right. So for all you shippers out there, the right answer for Harry was all of them: Molly, Murphy,
Mab.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This works.
All right, everybody's happy. Let's go. All right.
Happy's the way to look at it.
I think that was all the news, though, right? The cover is kind of the biggest thing in my mind. If you can afford to do so in these uncertain times, go give Badali some money, because they are also in those same times and stuff.
Yes, all of
they make really cool things.
They are really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with them, I learned about them back when they got officially licensed to do the Lord of the Rings jewelry. So they've been doing it for a while, and they do really good stuff. They've done some Iron Druid stuff. Dresden.
They have the Cosmere items, all of Brandon Sanderson's officially licensed things, Dresden stuff. They have a whole bunch of others I didn't even recognize when I was looking at them. A lot of urban fantasy, high fantasy, druidic, dwarven runes. It's so cool looking.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Good times. So now we're doing Warcry.
Well, you are.
Okay. So I'm in. I told you guys, I've been waiting 4 years for this episode, possibly even more. Because
you shaved your beard.
Yeah,
to
right.
Talk about Warcry.
I mean, it came out in 2014, but have we been doing the podcast that long? For the love of science, we've been saying 5 years, but 2014 was 6 years ago. So I guess 5 years and some change.
We started the January before your kid was born, because he was born in December.
Wow.
So what year was it?
I can't remember. I was in college.
It was 2014.
I'm asking his son.
Oh, it was?
Mm-hmm.
Fun.
So yeah, January 2014 then, because my boy was born December of 2015. So craziness. I mean, so the director likes to go page by page and word by word. What are we doing for the comic here? Are we going to do that sort of thing, or do you want a high level?
Do a summary into it in case people don't know. It's between Deadbeat and Next one, proven guilty.
Proven guilty.
You think?
Yeah,
It takes specifically 4 months after Deadbeat. So Deadbeat was October.
So this is February.
Right. In Iowa, because Iowa.
Which is why you wear a tank top.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
I agree.
February in Iowa, and not a damn person's wearing a coat.
Dresden is.
And yeah,
but he's also not wearing a hat, so he's not doing a proper job.
Yeah, even I think even Ramirez is wearing a tank top, isn't he? So
he's wearing like a normal shirt, like
Is he wearing a
swashbuckler
shirt?
kind of shirt, I think.
Yeah.
But Yoshimo's only wearing a tank top. There's a librarian chick who dressed like a stripper.
in her in fairness, she's literally at home. So
her home is being blown up. Why is she wearing a mini skirt with a slit up to her hip?
yeah, Ramirez is wearing like a proper
Sex
business shirt. He's very metrosexual in this.
Yes.
So so like anyway, so the chick is literally at home. They're all librarian nerds, but with all the hardware they're supposedly packing, not a damn one of them is wearing tactical gear. Like Ramirez is the most tactical out of all of them, of course,
Because
as
he has a
always.
gun.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean his holster and the fact that he's actually wearing like BDU pants and shit like that anyway. Whereas like Dresden is Dresden, we know what to expect from him. But yeah, like the mini skirt, the only possible thing is because she's at home. But like even like none of the other nerds are wearing anything remotely useful. So it's like, what was their game plan here? We're going to give a bunch of nerds a bunch of hardware. The Venatori doesn't have like a tactical wing. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, they don't have basic like equipment to wear. Like,
Right.
they could go to a hunting store, which I guarantee you there are around in Iowa.
There's an Army Navy surplus almost certainly. Like, yeah. Not to mention, I mean, like if they're going to talk about the hardware and the fact that they've got automatic weapons, like it was too hard to get claymores. You know, you've got a big open field in front of the house. But we could digress into that. You took issues with their attire. I took issues with the fact what Anna was the chick's name, but the blonde, she like totally hip fires the shotgun like over a windowsill at one point, and I'm like, no, come on, you're gonna bitch about the fucking skirt, but I'm like, nobody can, first of all, you don't ever shoot a shotgun like that in anything, but she's blind firing at impervious vampires over a windowsill from 100 yards away. Like, it was all bad. So an artistic license.
I read it out of order.
Oh no.
Which did make things confusing, but like, so at certain points I probably just stopped caring about the action. But now, once I realized the order they actually go in, it made a lot more sense, because otherwise Thomas just shows up out of nowhere.
And he's like, I'll explain later, and then doesn't.
Never. So Thomas gets an excuse to not wear a coat in Iowa because he's Thomas.
Right.
He is wearing a gray warden's cloak, and Harry is not.
Right. Because we got to set that up for 2 books.
And then they went running around in Deadbeat to avoid Thomas meeting all the wardens for a lot of big reasons of like, they're going to immediately doubt Dresden's integrity, Thomas and everything, use him against him. And then he just shows up here. And Harry says, I trust him with my life. We're trusting him, and move on.
To be fair, I mean, these are junior wardens, right? So it's not like
wardens under his command who like him.
Yeah, it's not like Morgan and Lucio. Like, now, granted, any of the baby wardens should know better anyway, but I don't think Dresden's nearly as worried about the baby wardens as he would be freaking Morgan.
And on to the point of the baby wardens. Why does Myers look like he's 12? Because I think he's a bit older.
Has he shaved?
Also, why does Myers use the word Haas? That annoyed me.
Yeah, that was and then Ramirez with Jefe and everything like that. It's like, okay, I mean, I get it, but
Well, I mean, but Ramirez has done that.
Has he?
Well, maybe not that word specifically, but I'm pretty sure he's chucked in the Latin charm here and there.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, obviously Myers hasn't been on screen for more than a phone call, I think, in the actual books.
Practically, yeah.
Yeah, very little, but I got the impression he is definitely not the same character as that they put into Warcry. I mean, he's the one that is so green. Apparently, he's having the anxiety attack as to how to handle combat or anything.
He did get his left arm smashed too. So.
Oh, that's why you thought left instead of right, probably.
Maybe. We'll blame my subconscious.
Yeah, but then when he does do the big thing that he can do, he builds a fucking mountain under the house.
because
should not be able to
the
do
magic
that.
was inside them the whole time. I mean, you saw what Yoshimo was doing. She's like, I summon a cyclone. And it's like, even Dresden in
She's
Skin
using
Game
Dresden
doesn't do that.
spells.
Yeah, exactly.
What the fuck is that?
And then they kill a city eater with some C4.
All right, let's do. We're all over the place. Maybe we should actually go in some kind of order, right? So
Okay, let's start in the beginning. They go over the Battle of Sicily, and Dresden says that the Wardens are incorruptible.
Yeah, I mean, some of that is probably just like, the propaganda, right? But yeah, like, so
Yeah, but
that's
Harry.
you guys focus on the stupidest shit. Like,
Well,
you've got a
you know-
2-page spread of fucking Lucio and Morgan and Ramirez and the Wardens fighting the vampires and the outsiders. You got a 2-page
that
spread,
was
and
good.
you
Sure.
focused on the word incorruptible. Like,
It stood out.
Well,
It was like,
and
I started-
he was on the
on-
final panel, right? Warcry, we're at the very ending.
what are you talking about?
Doesn't the very ending tease like why the outsiders showed up and
Yeah,
in
yeah,
charge
yeah.
and-
Eh,
yeah. So
we'll
yeah,
get to
that
my
was
problems with
directly
that.
paid off at the very end. At the very end, it was.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, but that's where I got hooked with Warcry, right? Is like you start out with Morgan in the streets of Sicily, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh shit, and then you turn like 2 or 3 pages, and then you see like the 2-page battle spread, and you're like, oh holy shit, like we get to see it. We get to
Yeah,
see the Battle of Sicily.
The Battle
like,
of Sicily part was really good looking. Like they didn't have to name any character, but I knew that was Morgan. I knew that was Lucio. That
Right.
was well done. And I knew the baby Wardens were, I guess, it's just that they don't seem like the same people that were from the books.
Sure. Well, and I mean, Yoshimo a little bit. Yeah, I get Wild Bill. Like, I mean, again, this is kind of before we actually meet him, and so it's possible like his character changed or something. Like the comics are in a weird kind of quasi canon state anyway, because like Butcher, like he writes them, right, but they're not always referenced into the main story. Like there are a couple of like throwaway lines here and there and the like, oh, I've been to wherever this one story took place, or I've been to that or whatever. Iowa never comes up. The fact that, he's a Starborn never once factors into the story, like I kept waiting for like, where's the Easter egg that I'm missing and stuff like that. Cause we've got, 5 years more Dresden since the last time I read it. So this one is a little rough, but between the Battle of Sicily and the bad guy towards the end, that's what kind of like solidified this for me, especially compared to Ghoul Goblin. Like we did Ghoul Goblin. It's forgettable because he literally goes up against a ghoul and a goblin. And, like one of the main takeaways there for me was like the cop who like turns into some kind of like crazy ass monster hunter at the end and just all this other stuff. But like it deals with a bloodline curse.
This is the one with the random genie out of nowhere.
That was the Naga. Is that what you're thinking?
Oh, yeah. I think it's the same one, but there was an older woman with a genie from Egypt.
Oh, right.
Nowhere.
Yeah. Was that one?
I don't remember. I think that's the one that was dealing with the bloodline curse.
Okay, then yes. Yeah, it must be. You're right. Yeah, so anyway, this story is better despite all the misgivings. It's almost all action, but it's not like, compared to other things, especially like this story could have easily warranted its own book, let alone doing a comic, like how is this not worse than what happened in Proven Guilty? Like comparatively, because Butcher always says that the books are like Harry's worst weekend. Like, how is this not comparable to,
I guess this is just one day instead of a weekend.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we get the Battle of Sicily
and then
for
they're in
backstory.
the Blue Beetle.
Right.
And then they open like an envelope of orders that they didn't get to look at before because
they were
so
magically
secret.
Encrypted.
Yes, they were so secret. They're magic and something. And the Blue Beetle dies. And so they have to run for miles to Iowa.
Well,
I mean, they're already partially there, right?
Right.
But
they're several miles away and then
they have to get to the house.
Right. And I mean, Yoshimo's running on a broken leg, like a several months healed, but still, I mean,
It's been 4 months. She broke her femur, I believe.
Right.
That's intense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are a lot of things there were only a few things that I felt like didn't get addressed in the story, right? Like Dresden kind of like brings it up and waves it off. There are even some other writing, like we kind of alluded to with like Thomas and some other things, where it's like they bring it up, but sometimes they just hand wave it away anyway. But it's like the writer / artists and stuff were like, no, we get it, but it's a comic. We don't have time to explain what we don't have time to explain.
Sure.
So,
And when in doubt, when you want to describe Eldritch Horror, just throw a bunch of mouths on it.
come on now. What else are you going to put?
They're indescribable. Don't
Right.
try to put them in a picture.
You're also talking about 120-year-old Eldritch Horror. What was scary 120 years ago is now like subculture for us.
It would be unsettling, but I mean, you go from like the bipedal guys with the mouth on their stomach in the first two panels, and then you got a tongue with a bunch of mouths on it is the big bad.
Right.
Mouths are unsettling. That is their justification.
Here's what I said in a similar panel at a convention once. If you are not freaked out by Eldritch horrors, you don't understand them well enough. And that's probably a good thing, because if you did understand them well enough, you'd be a gibbering mess. But
it just needs some TNT.
By definition.
Yeah, right. So they run to the farmhouse because we have to get in 2 panels why the Blue Beetle is unreliable in Dresden, So
well, there's also fucking 4 wizards sitting in it instead of just 1.
True, that's fair. So
yeah, they could have rented a horse and buggy, maybe.
Right, that it was a good joke. So
I would love to see the Amish adventures of Harry Dresden.
Life would probably be a bit more predictable. Like things would work because they wouldn't have the electricity. It would work. They get to the farmhouse, and there are vampires there already.
Yeah, they immediately get attacked.
Yeah.
So
and then there is the red shirt bad guys, a Bravosa and a blonde chick. I don't even remember if she had names.
I don't think she had a name.
Yeah, she's just the tits info dump walking kind of thing. She is the one that Bravosa talks to in order to explain, and that's it.
Right. And until she gets beat up a little bit and then, killed later. Spoilers. But
red shirts.
Yeah. So the opening fight was kind of fun because it's like you've got the 4 wizards, you kind of see them cut loose a little bit, and then like out of nowhere, the fucking Venatori kick open like every shutter on the house and just start like blasting vampires. And it's like, okay, I mean, that seems effective. So
yeah. Yoshimo is screaming Ventas Cyclus, which is one of Harry's spells, and at least with Ramirez, he has the green goo at one point. It's like,
so did you put it together? So Harry is fire, Yoshimo is wind, Bill is earth, and we know Ramirez is water because of Word of Jim, even though it's never been clear. The entropy magic is associated with the water.
I think he said that in the Q&A.
And Thomas is the heart, so by their powers combined.
Captain Planet! I was going to say Ebenezer, but I like Thomas being heart. That's
Ebenezer's not in this.
No, I know, but I had come up with the idea of Captain Planet before Thomas showed up inexplicably, and I didn't revisit the idea. So that's much better. So
this is why Thomas is going to pick up Amarakius.
Yes, there you go.
Okay.
He probably had it there the whole time. Because inexplicably, we'll get inside and I'll explain everything. Never
the true sword of the cross were the friends they made along the way.
I just want to appreciate Amarakius. The heart, love works.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for bringing us back to that 5 minutes later.
No, that was like just right now. She just said it.
So let's see. They get attacked. They retreat inside. They meet the Venatori. They have enough time to exchange names. McGuffin gets killed or almost killed. So the dude's name is way too close. Come on, like McGucklin or something like that. Yeah. I was like, he's just McGuffin from now on.
Because he was the casualty. As soon as they opened the shutters, one of the vampires just like chewed on him, and so now he's dying.
Right.
Yeah, because they all fucking suck.
They're nerds with assault weapons. They don't
magically. You don't need to be a nerd to when one guy jumps through a window and has your friend at knife point, shoot that guy instead of letting him whirl around and throw a knife at you.
The one dude is in a turtleneck, and it's not even tactical. Like, to the point I thought he had a bow tie, but I just looked again. He doesn't even have a bow tie. But seriously, like, my mind superimposed a bow tie. Oh, because there is another dude with a fucking vest and a bow tie. Like, they're that level of nerd. Like, you're focused on the skirt. At least she's at home. It's not like she's running around in the woods. Like, come on.
She has guests over. Why would you wear a skirt with a slit up to your hip bone?
Because there's a giant tongue monster in the basement and she got certain notions.
This is like Venatori Big Brother. Come on.
With all those mouths, he was just like, yep, skirt. That's the way to go. That's what I'm doing.
This is just so stupid and unnecessary.
Right. I mean, the whole reason for the Venatori being there only quasi makes sense anyway, right? So you've got a bunch of nerds protecting this chick who is bound to a monster in the basement. You know, we're ahead of a couple panels, but that's what's going on, right? Yeah. None of them are tactically trained. None of them have tactical equipment beyond the weapons that they're holding. They've got no plan for defending the place, and they're a bunch of nerds. So are we to infer that they were there studying it? Or were they there protecting it? Because neither of those things are actually happening, right?
Also, I kind of speed read through that part, but does he fucking explain how he binds it to her?
No.
Okay,
Wizard.
just making sure.
Yeah.
I was like, that's
and it had to be somebody, and it had to be somebody senior council level is kind of the inference from the story.
It had to be one of the wizards, but I'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. We will yell a lot about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
And for whatever reason, Dresden implicates Ebenezer. Like, that's how he gets name dropped in this. Is like, well, I wonder if Ebenezer did it. Why would you wonder that?
Because this is between deadbeat and proven guilty, where he's still all pissy at Ebenezer for not telling him the truth because he's a giant fuck tool with this shit. So until the next book, when it gets resolved and they go have spaghetti and meatballs together, he's got to be angry.
So when Ebenezer dies in peace talks, are you going to be happy or sad?
No, I'm going to be very upset.
Crushed.
Okay.
This is a character that shouldn't die.
Okay.
I don't know.
You know what? I mean, if Murphy dies also...
What if they die together?
Like, well, here's the problem.
What if he dies saving her?
Murphy's not going to die. She's going to fucking come back, so it doesn't help.
But if Ebenezer sacrifices himself to save Murphy...
Oh, God, I'm not reading anymore. I'm not even reading Battleground.
So is Ebenezer the Gimli in this case, and she's Legolas? Is that what's,
She's fucking Gimli. I don't care what her personal effrontery is towards it. She's short.
I thought they established Mouse was Gimli.
Right. Okay, so they get inside. Vampires start throwing rocks because all the tactical equipment they brought, that was the best they could do.
And then they have an army of people with guns and equipment and actual body armor.
Them,
Yeah, I appreciate that you like to rattle people by throwing rocks through windows. That to me is sound strategy.
And what's the deal with it being encased in the fucking crystal? Like,
that's the way it's in stasis.
Process.
I know, right? So because that to me is like, so when we do eventually meet the monster, to just spell it out here, so spoilers if you intend to read this and care about that sort of thing, it's a Shoggoth. It's basically a giant mouth with a billion other mouths on it. And it is amorphous. It's relatively true to the story, but the original story, it gets name dropped a couple of times in some other H.P. Lovecraft stuff, but the Mountains of Madness is the main focus story where it comes from. And it's eyes in that story. Like, I get it. It can do appendages. It can do whatever it wants. But in this one, the horror of it is like when it eats you, it apparently takes your anger in your mouth. So that's what it keeps, but it's like encased in a giant crystal, kind of like you would expect out of Demon Reach, so I was like, it'd be cool if we got something nodding to that. I don't know.
The impression I got when I read out Mountains of Madness was that the Shoggoth, as crazy and disturbing as it is, was still humanoid shaped. Like,
oh no
like gorilla-ish. So this seemed really
it's larger than a locomotive in the description. Like,
sure, I am not saying it's not like huge. It's like, Urseal kind of weird.
Yeah. It was always, I mean, let me see, because the Wikipedia had the description. So
okay, I'm gonna continue on. They're in a house and they're getting rocked, and like the library has all the books strewn across it, and they're trying to protect everything. Bill Myers out a window.
Called Shapeless. So just saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Meyer has a a rock thrown at his hand, and that's how it gets broken, and he needs to bandage up. Yeah.
Right.
Blah blah blah. I think Ramirez went skulking around the house, and then he comes back to Dresden of like, you need to see this.
Right.
But that might
I skipped the whole Myers thing. That's what happened.
There was some weird showdown between Dresden and Barbossa. Right. That was just like, we're gonna insult each other, and if you give us what you want, we won't kill you, but we'll kill everyone else.
Right.
You know, the normal thing.
They got a parlay because, you know,
well, that's why he's Barbossa, not Bravosa. I don't give a shit what anybody says.
I was thinking the same thing. So it was like, you know, parlay. Anyway. So yeah, Ramirez finds it. Then they go down to the dungeon.
So Ramirez managed to find it in the basement, and then when he's taking Dresden, the librarian with the skirt comes up and says, "No, you can't go. We already found it. And do you really think you're going to be able to stop them?"
Yeah, we're past this point.
Yeah, and they go down to a basement that cannot possibly be attached to that house because that is industrial factory basement. It's huge.
And for no reason.
Absolutely no reason.
It was made to house a Shoggoth that nobody knew was coming.
Right. It's got a tanker in there for some reason. And there's like, I mean, the industrial ventilation, fine, but it's not like the Shoggoth needs to breathe. So why bother? You know, why is it not just a hole that they've dug and put a monster in? Why is it a warehouse?
There was a quarry like 100 feet away.
Right. Which doesn't come up until the end, right? Like, I don't think there's even like a picture of the outside of the house that. Oh, do they?
Yeah, okay. It's like when you're looking at the house, like there's a field on the behind it, and then there's a quarry in front of it, and there's this like huge basement underneath this normal sized farmhouse.
I do see the quarry, yeah.
But I don't think they mention it either for tactical advantage or negative one way or the other. They just it's there.
They do show the vampires clambering over it at one point, but you're just supposed to ignore it like I did apparently. So
Oh, that's easy. Right. I can ignore everything in this comic.
I told you what the two big takeaways are. We'll revisit that. So
tongue mouth. Big takeaway.
Okay, you got a weird fetish, but you know, if you're into it,
I'm not going to
judge. But you're into it, so that's it doesn't matter. I didn't draw it either.
Okay. After they reveal the monster in the basement, she tells a story of there's a dude in a hood that binds it to her, and she says, "No, don't do it to me." And then he walks away, and she has to deal with a monster.
Darth Tyrannus. He just shows up and he says, "We need 2 million clones," and they're like, "Why?" And he's like, "My work here is done," and leaves. Sorry, I got very Star Wars vibes from the whole, like, there's a secret wizard running around. Like, it's obviously Black Council, like, but still they don't do anything.
Why did he assume it's someone on the White Council, and why did he not assume Cal?
Right. Because even in my notes when I first read it, I was like, is this Cal? And then, like, at the end, we find out it isn't. Assumedly.
There's no proof of that either.
But there's no other reason for that dude to be in the comic then.
It is a tall dude in a coat. There is no explanation as to who it is. And then when they reveal the other bad guy, he doesn't really look the same proportions.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's not exactly the most inconsistent thing in this comic. So let's go.
Mm-hmm. But
the next panels are gold though.
This dude really looks like Cal.
Sure.
I mean, he's swimming in a vortex of death.
Which next panels were gold? The one with the giant flashback to ancient Sumeria?
Yes, for no reason. Like, you know, because you need to understand. So Shoggoths in the Dresden Files, apparently, they're like in the Mountains of Madness, they were mostly like non-intelligent. They were just organic machines. Originally, I'm going all the way back to like the Elder Things created them to be glorified sweeper bots. Organic things that they manipulated through hypnotic suggestion, which seems to be as much as gets carried over for the Dresden Files. Then to take it up a notch, the Shoggoths in this one they eat sentient life. So they just ignore everything else. Everything else is in the way, which an argument could be made for that in the original anyway. And then they just eat things, and they're basically like an outsider weapon of mass destruction. And so you get this flashback to one of the Acadians.
Hammurabi.
Yes.
Because they
Babylon
named the
and
king was
Acadia.
Hammurabi.
Yes, yeah. So one of the Acadians pleading to Hammurabi to listen to him, and it's like, you guys have been kicking our ass for like years. What is wrong with you? And he's like, well, I'm the last one, and there's no time to explain, and we've got to run. And then they're like, what the hell's that sound? And they go outside, and he's like, so we're fucked. I told you we had no time to explain. We needed to run. And this thing is literally like the size of their entire country, just like destroying everything. And so I'm like, okay, I mean, because this entire comic, we don't explain anything. How did they stop it? Like, because the Sumerians also were before the White Council, right? So, you know.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think what they said, though, is that someone had summoned it. So they had some kind of practitioner
Sure.
that could accidentally pull it through, and maybe they could send it back. But
I'm just saying, like, the Merlin didn't show up to stop it because, you know, this is even before his time. So,
Unless
maybe
he-
it
is-
burned to death in the sun.
which
Fire hurts it.
yes,
I was gonna
fire
say,
bad.
You just
get
set a
it.
big fucking fire around it.
Right. I know. I in my notes I did mention how convenient conventional weapons are for this sort of thing. So
Quarry weapons.
no, because I mean they held it off for several minutes with flamethrowers. So you know.
Also, that seemed like an inordinate amount of. I mean, granted, I don't really know shit about quarries. That seemed like an inordinate amount of C4 for a quarry.
That just left around for
Yeah.
Thomas to run around and find.
The Venatori had been planning for this, but they couldn't set up booby traps for the vampires.
They've been planning for
Or
it. Because
get
they
armor.
quarry, but they didn't know what they were planning for.
right.
Okay. So after the flashback, there's more fighting.
Right.
I think this is where Thomas finally shows up because it has this
Not
all is
yet.
lost feeling. Okay.
Yeah, because first we have the wizards go on the offensive because they realize they can't really stay where they are because they're fucked because there's an elder thing in the basement. And then after some of the panels of fighting, there's a green beret that like sneaks into the house to kill all the Venatori.
And pretty much does because they're
and
all
just-
fucking useless.
Right, and just the one guy. They're nerds for the last time. Which
It
one of you
doesn't
nerds is going to
matter
cover my
when
six when the
you
vampires
have a
attack?
gun trained on someone whose back is to you, you don't. It doesn't matter what your profession is. You simply shoot them and don't allow them to turn around and throw a knife at you.
But she was going to hit Anna. Come on now.
Who cares?
had
Anna was like
armor.
stabbed already.
I think she's like the only one who lives or something.
Yeah,
The hot blonde is the one that
towards
lives.
the end. I mean, I
The
think
power of the
I think
sun.
2 or 3 of them made it, but yeah, like because the Green Beret kills at least 2 of them here, if
Yeah,
not
the
3.
men.
So, well, the one is the chick, the one that doesn't pull the trigger when she was supposed to.
Yeah, but
That's-
she's old, so she's not attractive.
oh my goodness.
No skirt for you.
And then like 2
Kind of
panels
like her
later,
ass is hanging
after
out of his skirt. This is stupid.
yeah, two panels later after he takes what's her face Taylor and Anna. So Catherine Taylor, Taylor's her last name in this case, and then Anna's the blonde chick. They go downstairs. That's when MacGuffin attacks and sort of frees them. And then that's when the mysterious cloaked figure in the woods starts killing people. And I totally, because it's inexplicable, like I did not remember it being Thomas. So I'm like, oh my God, who could it be? And then like, yeah, spoiler alerts, it's Thomas for some reason has a warden
Yeah.
cloak. He borrowed Harry's cloak, I guess,
Yes,
you know,
borrowed Harry's.
so because Harry left it at home because, you know, he doesn't wear the
because
uniform.
He's on official warden business and he's not wearing it, but Thomas the White Court Vampire is, and I trust him with my life. Just go with it.
Right.
Even
Yeah.
though they spent
Thomas
so
is
much-
wearing your underwear. Maybe there's a conflict of interest here, you know, so yeah.
It's out.
And then they fight more vampires because
Yeah.
reasons.
There's kind of that cool comic book saying of the blonde vampire info dump tits that she just gets the like knife through her skull
Right.
coming out of her mouth. That was kind of Thomasy. Okay. And
Then they fight Barbarossa.
But didn't he have like just like a standard knife? He didn't have a cavalry.
He's got-
saber. He didn't have his cookery.
Kukri.
Yeah.
Or his
It is
cookery.
just kind of like a straight blade, and then it like changes. No, this is Ramirez. Never mind. So because Ramirez actually has his rapier.
I mean, he's basically got the same kind of knife as.
It looks kind
Wild
of like
Bill.
a straight razor barber thing. To me, that's what it
Well,
looks like.
I mean, when he's slashing it, they do that like distorted vision of it every once in a while.
Yeah, it does change because, in a couple of places it has like it has the curve on the front end, but this other one panel makes it look like a wakizashi. So, because like the whole thing is curved. The back is very clearly straight in one of these scenes, and then in another one it's curved. So whatever. But it is definitely not a kukri, because I think they actually drew his kukris in one of the panels, because in between, so the copy that I have is the hardcover where it's all bound together, and in a couple of these they have additional art in other, so
yeah. So Thomas is there, and Harry, I think they all retreat into the house, and then they realize that Yoshimo and Ramirez did not come with, and so they're outside surrounded by vampires trying to survive.
This is also the place where he's like, Thomas, how did you get here? And he's like, I don't have time to explain. Let's get in the house. And then never explains it.
He did say something about, because to Bravosa of Thomas trailed the wizards and not Bravosa.
Oh, yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah.
Because they lived together. He just followed Harry.
Which he does a lot.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he follows Harry. It's in his character.
He does it several books. He usually also keeps a distance from the White Council. Bravosa has half his face blown off, and he gets to look all monstrous now. The kid would have liked this one.
Yeah, no, he was watching up until he got blasted in the face, and then that was I need to focus, and so he got that far at least. So it was some of this I'm just trying to read and push on, because he's
right when now he looks like a vampire.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he gets the monsters. He's definitely on a zombie kick right now. So,
so now Thomas gets brought up to speed as that there's a Shoggoth in the tiny farmhouse,
and he's like, "Why is there a Shoggoth in the basement?" And I'm like, "Why does Thomas know what a Shoggoth is?"
Why does he know? That makes sense because he's a true Venator.
Well, I was gonna say that makes sense for Thomas to know. He's part of the
all right.
But
I guess that's fair. But
why
shouldn't
did he not
Dresden
know
have
that?
asked that? Because Dresden doesn't know that he's a true Venator.
But with Lovecraft things, anyone can learn it by just going reading Lovecraft. That's not a high barrier of entry. That's why they published the Necronomicon.
Does Thomas look like the guy who is running around reading a bunch of Eldritch lore?
Thomas is the guy who will surprise you that he's not just an ambulatory penis.
See, this is why I'm surprised.
I mean, he's old enough, he knows shit.
Right. He drinks and he knows things. Yeah. And then we get a 2-page panel of him kicking Susan into the vampire pit. And
I enjoyed
Here's
that.
his backstory.
Right.
Here's why we're brothers.
Yeah,
Right.
I cursed your girlfriend into being a vampire. This is why we're brothers.
Right. But I tried to make it up for you by helping Susan save you in the vampire duel.
If it wasn't for Thomas, the Red Court would still be here. So I gotta say, all in all.
So really, Thomas is the one that took out the whole Red Court.
Without him, the Red Court doesn't die.
Nice.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Save the world.
Yay,
killed the girl.
backstory, whatever happens on these other panels,
Yeah.
more talking.
And now the Thomas
soldiers
says
show up.
the White Court is sending a full cadre of soldiers to take the monster, I guess, to help Bravosa, because the White Court and the Red Coat are working together, but Thomas isn't, and the White Council and Cal. The motivations of any of the bad guys in this do not really make sense.
The Red Court want to see the weapon unleashed one way or another, is what I gather. They would prefer to take control of it, but at one point he says it doesn't. Well, okay, so spoilers, right? So, but when it gets unleashed later, because of course it's Chekhov's gun in this comic, so it's going to get unleashed. When it gets unleashed, he's like, I don't really care if it gets loose and destroys half of the continent, because we'll just eat the other half, so. For whatever reason, they seem to know the Shoggoth is there and they're after it, but they also don't seem to be all that worked up when it gets loose, or at least he doesn't. His people are like, are you guys fucking crazy? But he's like, dude, I planned for this. Come on.
At one earlier thing, he had a quote to the blonde vampire of we are immortal. You only die if you're stupid. And he's sending waves of vampires to be cannon fodder. It's you die if you're cannon fodder. You live if you're lucky.
Right. And that definitely crossed my mind. I was trying to reconcile that too, especially with the background knowledge that these are the From Dusk Till Dawn type of vampires too, right? Because that's what From Dusk Till Dawn is a lot of as well. It's just waves of cloying vampires and shit getting blasted by these people stuck in a bar. And it's like, yeah, okay. So, I mean, it thematically fits from the original, but like from the vampire perspective, like you would expect it to be a little bit more like Underworld, right? Where they become the decadent elfish types where it's like, I'm just going to piss off for a few millennia because I can, because as long as I'm not stupid and go get shot, I'll be fine.
Their upper echelon certainly does that.
Right, exactly. And so like the younger ones probably like go kill the mortals because they should be able to win. And if they don't, they're definitely going to get killed by their superiors,
But he also brought enough cannon fodder. He knew that he would need that much cannon fodder.
Right.
To have against the wizards. It's just, and
yeah.
I mean, their explanation could also be of like, these are the ones that haven't handled the blood craze, just like what you see in Changes, the first wave of cannon fodder that Harry like disintegrates.
That crossed my mind too, but like a lot of those are older vampires, right? Like,
yeah, they lost control of their addiction.
Right. And none of them have flesh masks, so maybe that is the case, is he did straight up bring them.
Yeah, I guess so.
But some of them
could have done other things with them, damn it.
Right, and some of them do have intelligence enough, like they respond to like some of the tactics and they question orders and stuff. So they're probably just not in flesh masks because they're on the offensive and they're in the middle of nowhere, and it's easy to tell who the bad guys are at that point. But like a lot of the comic comes down to because the artist, because it's visually appealing and stuff, not necessarily because it's like consistent. So,
all right. So when they see the White Court soldiers that Lara is for some reason expending in this stupid way, which she wouldn't support because she's a Venator, Myers says something of like, they have humans, we can't kill them. No, you can't kill them with magic. You're a warden. You should know this. They kind of broke him.
Oh, I don't remember. Did they say Lara specifically sent them?
No, White Court, but I mean, who else?
Right, because at this point, Big Daddy Wraith is still in charge.
I think they did mention no.
Oh, good point. Yeah,
no, because the Blood Rights is when she took over, and I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
Barbarossa says something like, I don't care who your sister.
Yeah, we were thinking White Knight. So. But yeah, if Thomas is exiled, then Lara's in charge.
Right. And he does call him the exile.
Well, then I guess that it makes sense that if she knows as a Shoggoth, then she could do the end around of, we're gonna play nice and look like we're supporting you, but actually I'm fucking taking control of an outsider and getting rid of it.
And getting hundreds of like mortal soldiers ganked for no reason.
So, yeah.
They don't care.
Right. I mean, compared to like the entire continent, then, so.
Yeah. But Lara uses her people
especially it's not her people, so.
Well, even her mortal security, she takes better care of. That's
better, but by comparison, if I need meat suits, you're not sending. I mean, it's not like she's care of them.
Sending the sisters.
She sent them to die for the sisters to survive. So
and Thomas, which she does still care about her brother,
right?
And she sent the soldiers that are very trained against her brother, knowing that he would do that.
Well, did she know he was going to be there?
Probably. I think the idea of Shoggoth and Venator,
sides. Right? Because she's his contact. So spoilers for backup if you haven't read that. So the true Venator operate in cells of like 2 people, and she is Thomas's contact. So he and her are the only 2 that he knows exists, even though there is supposedly this huge organization that he works for and everything.
Venatori Umbrorum that the librarians are a part of, or the kind of fake face of it, so that the true Venators cannot know each other and not know each other's secrets because they want to forget all of the monsters into non-existence.
Right. And in backup, he has a conversation with Bob about how it's like people take the name to mean hunters of the shadows, but it's probably more correct the other way, that they're the shadows of the hunters. So the true Venatori are the actual hunters, whereas like the Venatori Umbrorum are, the shadow puppet, cat's paw, something, which is such a White Court thing to do. So
very in their schema.
Yeah. So then Harry releases the Kraken, which is apparently all the explanation that's warranted.
Yeah.
Like,
so
It doesn't get loose. He doesn't say, "Hey, why don't you go push some buttons or focus or whatever?" He just says, "Release the Kraken," and it escapes.
It's not like the woman dies and her dies.
Right.
Is it?
Yeah, because that's what I remembered.
So Myers is having his crisis of like, what the hell can I do? Oh, I'm going to build a fucking mountain underneath the house. And you don't see the disaster of what happens to this gigantic basement. That is not the thing that lets the Shoggoth loose. It's
Right.
Harry saying, release the Kraken.
Right.
He should not have been able to do that mountain. Earth magic is heavy. Earth magic is heavy.
Magic. But he's really good at it, like better than Morgan good.
Better than Ebenezer?
Clearly not. Like he is in the comic because they drew it that way, but he's not actually. This guy's he's basically fucking Toph in this book. He's an earthbender.
Yeah,
Toph
that's fair.
Like they established that Toph is capable of that.
Well, yeah, but that's my point. They turned him into
No,
your
he hurt his
standard,
hand and then
really
he built a
big-
mountain.
Right.
Well, my hand is whatever.
Because as long as you draw deep and you get really mad about it, you can do cyclones, mountains, and just shoot green shit because Ramirez never gets angry enough apparently. So
Also, I mean, they didn't draw him with his gauntlet, right?
who?
Ramirez. 'Cause that's how he does the green shit is through his gauntlets.
I don't think so. Unless
Yeah, I don't think there was a gauntlet.
Mm.
His gauntlet. He has these there are these entropy
has
gauntlets that shoot
gadgets.
that green goo. That's how he uses it. I don't think it's not really that's his focus for it.
right.
I do think release the Kraken is a very hairy thing to do and say at least.
Sure, that's not
sure.
the problem. It's just
Yeah, he does not have a gauntlet on.
One
Just
of the things
feeding you
you don't-
pants and grenades.
One of the reasons it might not work is because it's working from the this kind of third person omniscient perspective when all the novels are from the first person. So you're switching back and forth between things Harry can't possibly see or know, and then it's going back and forth. So I think it's a visual. You won't really do it, and then the next thing is just in the comedy shot of the Shoggoth.
yeah. I
releasing himself
mean,
constantly.
but Harry saying release the Kraken does not cause it to happen. The woman that it's bound to does not want it to get released because she's terrified of what it'll do to civilization. So
Sure.
what
It
actually
needed to
triggered-
happen. It needed to happen. Because
Also, they get off really fucking easy with the supposed mind-bending horror that it is.
Mhm.
yeah, I was thinking a lot of that too. Like he at least talks about it, and then like it almost takes Harry, which is also kind of important in a natural place to be like, oh, by
Right.
the way, I'm Starborn, or the fact that I literally have a sitting freaking angel in my head, and I know that now, and I've
Yeah,
been
why does
using
she show
Hellfire.
up in
and-
any way.
Right, exactly. Like she doesn't so much as like, Harry, are you motherfucking kidding me? That's a goddamn Shoggoth. Like
For
we were
using
created by the
Hellfire-
white god to fight those things, like anything. So
Using Hellfire against the thing that apparently is vulnerable to fire. It was a very obvious thing to do, and he didn't do it. And Lash doesn't
Right.
exist, even though she does.
right. I was taken aback. I had to think back through like the wait a minute, because he's got his gloved hand, right? So they clearly kept the continuity that he'd been burned.
At
But I'm
one
like,
point,
he's using a lot of fire, but then I'm like, oh well, he does use Hellfire against Cowl.
At one point, he had a
so-
conversation with Meyer of basically, calm down. You have to pull power in. It's going to hurt your broken left hand.
Right.
Even though they don't establish in the books that drawing in the power hurts a damaged left hand. It's just the hand is damaged. It hurts.
Right.
Like they took something in the laws of how he said it's supposed to work and made that a little bit too literal. Same thing with they have humans, therefore we can't kill them. That's not the
And the more I
law.
think about it with Lash now, they wasted the opportunity to have her break him out of the illusion. And
Right.
Yeah.
maybe
Exactly.
tempt him to use the Hellfire, and then he's in the quarry and he could do this giant fucking thing. No,
Right.
Yeah, they should have
There-
used Flash.
Yeah. There are some things that are surprisingly, like some little nibbling details that are surprisingly good brought forward and stuff, but then there are some big gaps, right? Like the Last Shield one was definitely one of the whole, like, wait a minute, like he knows now and he's actively using her, it's not as well established by now as it would be, in the next two books, but even still, yeah, just
Well, considering how much explanation they had to give of Thomas's backstory, I really think that if it would have been either continuity first or supporting cast first. And I think this comic was all about getting the wardens, showing the wardens and having a warden story. That's what the emphasis here is, with a little bit of Thomas thrown in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Whose name's on the cover though? Like, is there Yoshimo and Bill and no? It's the Dresden Files, man.
I'm just saying. Yeah, I'm just saying. That adding Lash to that mix would have been much. You would have had Lash in there from the ground up, but I don't think that's a story that wanted to be told. He wanted to have some excuse to get wardens together in a house in a zombie movie kind of setup.
For pop up when he first sees the Shoggoth and get a rundown on what the fucking thing is. Maybe she could describe the stupid Babylon story.
Exactly.
That's true.
Like having her do the.
That's really good.
But then who's she? Who's she? Then you have another spread explaining who she is.
You could end the what was it? When did he actually look at the Shoggoth? The third issue.
The third or fourth issue.
That's it. Somebody write this down. We're gonna ask Jim the next interview. Like, dude, why is Last Shield not in this comic? Seriously, you wrote this.
It's trying to expose facts.
So in order to show that just being near the Shoggoth when it's active and not encased in crystal kind of fucks with everyone's mentality, the two surviving women start fighting each other.
Wow. You definitely have... Yes.
It's like, okay, so there's real fight and like people with flamethrowers and armor and then a cat fight on the side. It's
right. Yeah,
I do. The one that I care about. I do not care about the women.
I do dig the Starship Troopers coming out of nowhere.
Yeah. Don't care about the women director.
But I guess it does show Thomas being able to seduce the hot blonde one, I guess, or both. John.
He talks to her about controlling her feelings. It's not his fault that he's got sexy waves just spreading out everywhere. So.
It works though. I mean, they established that all the way in Grave Peril.
And then
the last time he ever used that handily.
And then Yuki totally summons a cyclone and freezes it to death. Oh, wait, no. Then they run out there, and for some reason, Dresden gets affected, but nobody else does.
Like the guy with the built-in natural immunity to
right, yeah,
outsider influence.
He sees Justin Demorne and almost kills Thomas, but Thomas's total faith that Harry's not about to choke him out is what finally breaks him out of it.
That he can see Thomas's total faith, even though he just thought it was Demorne.
Right.
It's like, what? I mean, you know the guy is dead, or you think the guy is dead. So you seeing an image of him is enough to like go
Eldritch horror, incomprehensible horror, man.
Oh, don't even
non-Euclidean geometry.
It's a tongue with a bunch of mouths, and he gets over it by looking deeply into his brother's eyes.
And wouldn't you? If you look deeply into Thomas's eyes, you'd get over a couple things too, I bet.
He's
director has no chance. I mean,
the director, Ben, they're going down.
I mean, Ben's in California. He's halfway there anyway, so.
Well, Thomas could use some sun.
Warren looks like Dave Bautista.
Right. Yeah, I know. I just wrote that off as like, this is the scary childhood version of
Demorne, I know.
It's like he's bigger in real life or whatever, But then Harry outruns a Shoggoth that can chase everybody and whatever.
They send the baby wardens and the surviving librarians off to safety, and Thomas is going to deal with. Thomas is going to deal with the quarry and explosives, and Harry's going to lure it to the explosives.
Right. Because he's got the biggest brain left still there.
Well, he insults it by calling it a 50s sci-fi monster, and clearly he takes umbrage to that.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, I don't see any C4 in any of these pictures.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not until the end.
Loads of TNT and barrels of supposedly explosive things because, that's a thing.
And then it turns into bricks.
Where does it turn into bricks?
Towards the end, the last few, I think, right before it explodes, aren't they bricks?
Nah.
C4 looking.
Nah, there's still stacks of TNT, like comically, like Acme TNT stacks, so. Because even up to the explosion, I don't see anything, and then Thomas and Dresden rib each other. But yeah, that was a great takeaway too, right? So we've got 100 dudes with flamethrowers from the future Starship Trooper style, they can hold it at bay for several minutes. They mention it like at least twice in the dialogue. And then, TNT is all it took to bring it down. And I'm like, well, why didn't the ancient Sumerians just think of that? So no, I'm going to laugh if Harry just starts plugging the corner hounds. He's like, oh my God, they're susceptible to my 45. This is great. Why were we afraid of this? Why didn't the Angels just use TNT the whole time? So
the Angels don't need TNT. They just need to think about thing blowing up and it blows up.
Right. And then
what happened to the cannon fodder? Did they get eaten or did they run away?
Theoretically, they all got eaten. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think that was a little vague. And then
you didn't see them getting crushed by the mouths?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Who pays attention?
But there is a fight with Dresden and Bravosa because something has to deal with the red shirt, and that something is the Shoggoth because they were fighting and his foot got latched onto it and he got eaten. At least that was.
And it almost happened to Dresden too, but he got his shoe out. Thank God for that.
Yeah, he's just running around in the quarry barefoot on one foot.
Yeah.
Which is the smarter thing to do when it's a Shoggoth, but
it's also a very Dresden thing to do. So
yeah, I can see that. And then they're just running down the quarry, and there's a tractor and giant diesel something. And there's some more running, and there's an explosion. Somehow Thomas and Harry get away from the explosion that's big enough to kill the Shoggoth. And
they were outside the blast radius. And I think the thing to take away here is that it only eats sentient creatures, but boy, is that dynamite tasty for some reason. So, because the picture shows it enveloping it and then exploding.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have jumped into the Never Never to make it more realistic. They were running away from the explosion.
That makes a lot more sense.
Why don't
if it's good enough for a nuke when Morgan does it, it's good enough for whatever that was.
Right. And then at the end, we have the secret reveal of the guy who was behind it the whole time. It was Peabody for some reason. So
yeah, and
he's so much more badass in this than he gets described in my mind. He's like the weaselly little nerd in Turncoat, but in this one he's like a total German badass.
They turned him into this bearded office sitting.
Right. Yeah. He's got his own office. He's a secretary, man. He's the
He had his office.
Small and stuff in the closet.
With his name on the door in gold.
Right. He has an office, but I took it as more like a file room, right? Because he goes in there and he's got all these files and shit. This one is more
that's how Harry describes it, as a big ass fucking filing cabinet.
And this one is like he's the CEO of the White Council, you know. Like,
well, yeah. He looks like the dad from Evangelion, instead of like droopy dog.
Yeah.
Instead of boring and you can ignore him, he looks intimidating and you have to look at him.
Right.
Well, he's alone, so it's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe this is Peabody Senior. Like,
on his rotary.
That's who Cowell is. Cowell is Peabody's dad. That makes sense. So you're talking to Mr. Peabody, whereas Junior Peabody was that little squirt that Dresden,
He's also really fucking confident about the fact that, this city-ending terror, we got plenty more shit.
Right. We'll get another one. Yeah.
Yeah. So he says the Shoggoth would have been ideal for our purposes. And it obviously doesn't describe what that is. But and who is he talking to? If Peabody wanted to get the Shoggoth to, say, the Red Court so that they can do outsidery shit like they have been doing, why didn't he just give it to them directly? Why did he have to attach it to a librarian in Iowa?
Mortal.
And then how did the
Wizard's
White Court...
immortal? Keep it attached to yourself.
No, that's crazy. That's literally the definition of crazy. It's an eldritch horror.
It didn't drive them insane until it got loose.
Yeah.
Don't ask too many questions.
Yes.
We don't have time to explain what we don't have time to explain.
Why would I do that?
Yeah. It's so, like I said, this to me was a big deal for two big takeaways, right? the Battle of Sicily, we actually get to see it instead of just get described with, oh my God, there were hundreds of wardens and thousands of vampires, and how cool would that have been to see? We actually get to see it. We get to see Morgan.
Get to see
Morgan's not a big, tall black guy. I'm sorry, people who watch the show, like, you know. And then the fact that because it's a Shoggoth is firmly in H.P. Lovecraft's realm. So name drops to the Necronomicon and Corner Hounds and other things like that are not just like cutesy tie-ins. Like H.P. Lovecraft is going to be a cornerstone of this, in my opinion. Like it's just going to get more, which we now know 5 freaking years later that it's going to come back in peace talks. You know, this, I'm pretty sure this either came out before or just after Cold Days, so we never got to see an outsider. Like you might be able to say the ghouls that he fought, you know, in the Deeps were kind of, but they might have just been like, you know, outsider adjacent, whereas like in Cold Days
he absorbs an outsider or he channels an outsider or whatever.
Yeah, he's clearly
but it's still
bonus.
There weren't nearly enough mouths, so how would you have known?
Because he was in a human host. Or a White Court host.
That's why I'm just saying there weren't enough mouths. So now it's starting to kick up, and you know that's where it feeds a lot of my headcanon that you know this is going, is that you know it's Team Reality versus outsiders. So
their motivations in this kerfuffle does not make sense.
Nobody's motivation in any of this.
Like elaborate, because you know it's
their
a talk
motivation in Cold Days makes sense. They want to destroy Demon Reach because that would cause a whole bunch of shit, and
it's
then they would have,
and
then they would have Maeve infected as the Queen of Winter instead of just the Lady. Like they would get a whole bunch of shit out of Cold Days. That is an example of like their motivations make sense. But in this one, it's Peabody, maybe Cal. Cal looks right, but why Peabody, attaching it to some unknown person in Iowa, then sending people to try to get it, apparently, because White Court, or White Council and White Court and Red Court is just, they don't make sense.
The attaching thing doesn't make sense, especially without it requiring like the sacrifice to let it free. You know, like the fact that she lives to the end kind of derails a lot of that.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It's not drawing energy off her. It's not life force. It's not.
It's basically
her blood can release it.
You can ignore it. Yeah, you could easily ignore it. Other than the fact that the Black Council did it. We had to have a reason for that to be a thing. So Iowa kind of makes sense because it's the middle effing nowhere in the continental U.S. and you know
it had to be drivable from Chicago.
That too, but you know also it's kind of centrally located to eat everything. So.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if it would be one thing if it was like this particular, I don't know, chapter had been guarding this thing for fucking 50 years, passed down from child to child of the head of the chapter, and it was this blood ritual that kept it, and now everybody fucking knows it's there.
That would be so much better.
To get it.
This is why you should be a beta reader. You could have put these things out there. I don't even know if they get in the comics, but still,
I certainly hope.
Yeah.
Because then I'm gonna have a stern talking to some people.
Well, I do think this is the comic that really nails the art style, at least as far as positives go. I think the art style is fairly consistent. It's much more attractive than some of the other stuff that like the early adaptations of Stormfront and I mean, Welcome to the Jungle was kind of the really early comics were really rough. This is at least a lot.
Yeah, the comics are still not completely amazing, but this is the best of the ones that I've read and possibly the best of them overall. Like I think part of it helps that it is just action the entire time, whereas like Ghoul Goblin really it's a Dresden story, but it's not especially great for a couple of reasons. You know, you get some world building, you get the detective stuff, you get the whatever. This is a completely different kind of story, but obviously for the last hour you've heard us expound on some of the holes in it and things like that. You know, but if you want to see 4 wizards throw down and then Thomas show up and summon Captain Planet, then, you know, it's really good. It's very pretty to look at.
Yeah, I mean, the characters did look like exactly who I thought they would be. So it's like you can look at them and recognize them. That was really well done on the artist's hand. It's just...
Especially Harry. Harry really nailed Harry, I think.
Right. He's a little too commanding for me in this one. You know, like I know he's playing the part and stuff, but he's chiseled and just, you know, everything, which I mean, I guess he's been running for a while by now and stuff, but he just,
he hasn't gone through the Ghost Story Cold Days boot camp yet.
Right, exactly.
So yeah. I mean, but like I read them out of order. So I went from 1 to 3 and Thomas was there. It's like, why is he there?
It only slightly makes more sense if you go in order. So, yeah.
But like I could recognize him. I was just staring at it for a minute of like, why is he here?
Right.
But
have you done Dogman yet? Because
No.
as far as I know, that might be the best of them all. That's the only one I haven't read.
Yeah, that's the one I haven't read. And there's supposed to be a decent, like, not Easter egg, but a decent tie-in from there. So I need to read it. But
we should probably at some point, right? Yeah.
Next time on the Dresden Files podcast.
join us 5 years from now when we finally read the next comic.
Yeah, maybe.
I think we need a break. Let's start throwing down about mantles, maybe.
Oh.
Let's do something soft to like time travel shenanigans.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Oof.
And who gives birth to who in the Dresden Files? Yeah, you're welcome for that. I worked it in slow for you. So Ben, take us out.
Okay, this has been the Dresden Files podcast. Oh no, where did
Yeah, she disconnected.
Oh, crammity.
Oh, he gets to be the host because of that.
I didn't even know how this stuff fits. Oh my god.
They've gone plaid.
Podcast, I guess.
All right.
The director's absent.
I'll plug our shit. We've only got one thing left.
What is do we even have DMs Anonymous yet? Or what is it?
I don't know. The only person who was on it wasn't on today.
Oh, well, what else do we have to plug?
We can plug, there was a very nice shout out from another channel, totally unrelated to Dresden Files. His name is Thor Skywalker. He's all Star Wars stuff. He gave us a shout out, so go watch it.
Nice. Go watch him, and maybe Daniel Green even. But then back episodes of stuff, and High Fantasy Hiatus, and Humorous Ending, I guess. Do we just end the meeting now?
Do you have an end the meeting button?
I do. I guess I could just press the button.
Click the end of the button.
I should press the button. Is that here?
You do what you want.
End recording anyway.
Oh, how do I end recording?
Oh, good lord.
Because we're professionals, we're totally going to cut this part out. So.
We're really not.